California Governor Gavin Newsom will remain in office after handily surviving last night's recall election. CBS News projects a defeat of the recall effort, with more than 60% of voters deciding against ending his first term early. Here's how Newsom celebrated the victory.
I'm humbled and grateful to the millions and millions of Californians that exercise their fundamental right to vote and express themselves so overwhelmingly by rejecting the division, by rejecting the cynicism, by rejecting so much of the negativity that's defined our politics in this country over the course of so many years.
President Biden congratulated Newsom Wednesday, saying in part, quote, "This vote is a resounding win for the approach that he and I share to beating the pandemic. Strong vaccine requirements, strong steps to reopen schools safely, and strong plans to distribute real medicines to help those who get sick." Republican radio host Larry Elder led the ballot of potential replacement candidates. In his concession speech, he told his supporters to, quote, "be gracious in defeat," and said his campaign forced Governor Newsom to pay attention to important issues. For more, I want to bring in the San Francisco Chronicle's Washington correspondent, Tal Kopan. Tal, welcome. So it was a late night, but it wasn't as late as it could have been. We knew pretty early on in the evening. And so let's talk about the counting here. So more than 9 million votes have been counted. What do we know, Tal, about who did and who did not actually turn out to vote?
Well, so far, for a special election, the turnout numbers look pretty good. We think that what we're seeing right now in terms of the results are largely the people who mailed their ballot in before the election. California, under sort of the pandemic changes to everything, including elections, actually mailed a ballot to every single voter. So many, many voters were able to send their ballots in early. What we think is outstanding are ballots that were either postmarked or dropped off yesterday, or people who voted in person. So there's an expectation that these numbers will still shift a little bit, because that in-person vote is likely to skew a little bit more Republican than the early vote electorate, which was predominantly Democratic. But overall, Newsom and Democrats got what they wanted, which was Democratic turnout. His real opponent in this recall was always Democratic apathy. It was never that Republicans were suddenly surging statewide. It was the concern that Democrats just wouldn't vote, and then it would suddenly become competitive.
Yeah, so late Tuesday, Governor Newsom said that Californians voted no on the recall and yes on major issues like science, immigration rights, women's rights, and more. What do you think, Tal, ultimately resonated with voters?
Well, if you look at some exit polls, if you look at just what has been happening, I mean, certainly pandemic response became a huge part of this recall. My colleague who covers Sacramento, back in Sacramento, Alexi Kosef, wrote a story, in some ways the pandemic started this whole recall effort, and then in the end really saved Gavin Newsom, because he, once it became clear that Larry Elder was his main opponent, he was really running for vaccine mandates, for mask mandates, for generally practices among this pandemic that the California electorate overwhelmingly supported. And so it certainly, his characterization that voters endorsed his policies. I mean, we saw that in the statement from President Biden, too. It's funny, last month I was at the press briefing and I asked Jen Psaki, the press secretary, if they viewed this recall as a referendum on their pandemic policies. At the time, she didn't want to answer it. But today, President Biden put out a statement very closely aligning himself with Newsom and saying that this is what voters backed in this election.
Yeah, oh, how things change, right? Because when we were digging into the numbers last night, when you looked at what was most important to voters, clearly, as you point out, it was the coronavirus, which some say, is a bit ironic considering it was that infamous maskless dinner with lobbyists at that fancy French Laundry restaurant that initially prompted some outrage that gave a push to this recall effort. So, that evolution has been interesting to watch in terms of voters' attitudes. Tal, let's talk about Larry Elder. So he was the likeliest candidate to replace the governor had he been recalled. Now, Elder became the frontrunner in just 2 months, which was kind of meteoric. We saw this sort of rise here, right, towards the very end. Do you think, Tal, we can expect to see more of him moving forward?
Well, he certainly thinks we'll see more of him moving forward and forecasted that on a radio appearance yesterday where he said he's not going to leave the stage and declared himself a major force in California politics and Republican politics. You know, it's interesting. I've been working on a story all day and talking to several, pollsters who really know the electorate, Republican strategists, about what it means that, Larry Elder, when you look at just the people who voted for a replacement candidate. So let's remember about half of the electorate didn't vote for a replacement candidate. So, those are largely Democrats who just didn't choose anyone. But among the people who did vote for someone to replace Gavin Newsom, I mean, Elder is far and away the choice, I think approaching 47% as it stands now of those who did cast a vote for a replacement. And, in a state like California, name ID is huge. It's a big state. And partisan politics are just as salient as they are anywhere else in the country. So in Larry Elder, you have a talk show host with a built-in audience, frequently appearing on Fox News and very much in the center lane of the Republican Party right now, very much aligned with Trump. And so you saw him running away with it among those that wanted to remove Gavin Newsom. So it's hard to imagine that after a result like this, beating people who have held elected office in California before by a wide margin, that he would just sort of disappear in terms of state politics.
Well, speaking of the former president, he said that this election was, quote, probably rigged. Now, here's some of Governor Newsom's response to that.
And I think about just in the last, few days, and the former president put out saying this election was rigged. Democracy is not a football. You don't throw it around. It's more like antique vase. You can drop it and smash it in a million different pieces. I said this many, many times on the campaign trail. We may have defeated Trump, but Trumpism is not dead in this country.
It's interesting, Tal, because you mentioned how early on for Democrats, apathy was the big issue for them that they were fighting in this. And now here you had Governor Newsom. You also, as you mentioned, had Larry Elder really kind of taking a cue from the former president here with respect to animating their respective bases. How did Mr. Trump factor into this election?
Well, I found it fascinating yesterday when Trump put out his statement on the recall. He did not mention a single candidate. He did not even urge his supporters to vote against Newsom. He didn't mention Newsom by name. He just put out this statement that was largely about Trump and, how many votes he had gotten in California and what he had done on water policy. And then it had this line of, and it's probably rigged and, the current guy will probably win. And so, someone said to me, Trump doesn't really like to be associated with losers. And certainly the polls were clearly showing that Newsom was far ahead yesterday. So perhaps there was a little bit of that he was smart enough to not align himself with a candidate that he didn't think was going to win. But there are plenty of people who think that it was really harmful to Republicans that Trump carried on this message and Larry Elder picked it up, declaring the election rigged, which, by the way, to be clear, it was not. Even before votes were counted, to have that message could encourage people that would otherwise come out and support, Larry Elder or someone else, encourage them to stay home. And so, there's already consideration that perhaps the Georgia Senate race that we saw last year could have been lost because of this type of rhetoric. I know there are plenty of Republicans who are frustrated to see it once again coming into play. And once again, to reiterate, this election was not rigged. There may be one-off instances of irregularities or issues that have specific explanations, but overall, by and large, it was administered correctly and fairly, and mail-in ballots, are something that California has done in the past and been able to do with, ensuring the results are accurate.
Yes, I'm sure that politicos are going to be dissecting what happened in the recall election last night, especially as you look ahead to the midterms in 2022, plus, of course, the California gubernatorial race next year as well. So to be continued. Tal Kopan, thanks so much, Tal. Really good to talk to you.
Thank you for having me.